Hi, everyone. This week we've been focusing on making inferences and drawing conclusions from within Enrique's journey. And in this mini lecture, I want to talk about quote integration as well, because this is how you'll be demonstrating your ability to effectively make inferences and draw conclusions. And this is what I'll be asking you to demonstrate within your upcoming quiz. So there are a number of steps I'll walk you through briefly. First is to know your source and format. Enrique's Journey is a full-length work by author Sonia Nazario, who is a woman. We will use she and her to refer to her. And because it is a full-length work, we will also italicize the title, including the subtitle the very first time that we use it, and introduce the work. And it's important to note that this is a work of nonfiction. Right? So it's not a fictional work with fictional characters, but a real-life journey. And I don't think I have to express that to you, but just to repeat it here, I think is important. All right, so we can use this text as an example of expert writing. Obviously, as the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, she is known for her not only her research, but also her skill at crafting the story and weaving together various pieces of information to create a whole. But what that creates for us is a challenge in quoting because there are multiple layers. As you can see, it's not just coming from Sonia Nazario's perspective, but she's quoting many people that she has interviewed throughout this journey. And we have to be mindful of who is speaking at any given time. So how do we quote it? The first thing that we want to think about are these 5 simple steps. Okay, so number 1, when you are trying to demonstrate the conclusions that you've drawn from any text, you want to think about the section of the text that is important. Obviously, we can't quote the entire book. We can't quote an entire page at a time. So we think about breaking it down into our smaller sections. Then within that section, we want to identify clearly who is stating or providing the information. Who is the speaker? Not just Nazario, because Nazario is often, right, as I said, using information, direct quotes from others, or alluding to information that others have provided, paraphrasing it. So where is this information coming from? Who is the true speaker or the true owner of that statement? Then we want to quote what was said exactly. So this is when you want to go back repeatedly to your quotes, make sure you're typing them accurately so that we can also have credibility. Then we use signal phrases to show how it is said. This means capturing the tone of voice so that we, once again, we're accurately depicting the situation, the voice of the individual. And it also is allowing us to showcase our ability to draw inferences. So we are not just consistently saying someone is stating something, but are they questioning it? Are they confused? Are they angry? We are imposing our interpretation within our citations. And then cite where you found the info, right? What page? So that's as simple as that. So here's steps 1 through 5 illustrated for you. I've taken the same section or the same passage from before, and now I've broken it down. The first thing I've done is I've identified the section that has drawn my attention, the section that I feel best illustrates the argument that I've concluded is there, right? That I've drawn inferences about. So I identify that underlined section. Then I have to reflect on who is stating this. Again, yes, Nazario is stating this, but within this context, I want to give credit to Octavio Lozano Gomez. And I also want to know and note who he is, right? What is his credibility, his ethos? I want to make sure that my readers have a clear understanding of his position within the text. The what is obvious here, after I've underlined the section, I want to make sure that the quote will be accurate. So I'm going to make sure that I look at all the punctuation, I look at the spelling, etc. I'm also going to reflect on the way it is said, how, and I can look at the signal phrases that Sonia Nazario uses, acknowledges, doubts. These are important signals not only for my own use of quotation, but they are also important references to the character of this individual, right? And the way in which he's expressing himself. If he's acknowledging something and he's doubting it at the same time, then I see this individual as hedging, perhaps obscuring information or denying it. And of course, I want to be mindful of where it is located in the text, and I have that here, right? So as you're drawing out quotes and passages and sections from the text, later on as you're beginning to gather evidence for your essay, make sure that you're also writing down where that particular passage is located. Okay, once I've done those steps, now I have to integrate the section into my own writing. This is when I really impose my arguments onto the text. Right? I'm showcasing the conclusions that I've drawn. I start by introducing the quote and giving context to it. Of course, I would usually have a larger pie paragraph, a main point that I am offering for my reader. This is just integration of the section. But you can see where my point is, kind of what point I'm implying here. While bribery and abuse of migrants is all too common, many in authority deny this overwhelming corruption. So I'm focusing on the larger problems within society, maybe connected to human rights or connected to the reason that people abuse others. What is the root of that? So I'm introducing this here, and then I'm showing the speaker or the source, making sure that that's clear. I'm not just jumping right into the quote itself. And so I've given the name. I've briefly acknowledged the role that that person has with police chief. And then I use my own how statements, my own signal phrases. He admits, he ignores, he chooses to believe. Notice that I am using my inferences that I drew from the original text in order to now argue that this is maybe a miscarriage of justice in ignoring something. I'm going to quote the important sections clearly and accurately, and you can see that here. But what's important, you can see the color coding. This is a quote within a quote. This is Nazario's language here of his 720 employees, right? So I use the outside quote, double quote. But here's where we have a direct quote coming from Gammas. So I use an apostrophe because that's a quote within a quote. And I'm closing it here. And I'm also closing the larger quote again. This is my language, right? I'm interjecting. And then I'm starting again, that outside quote and the inside quote as well. I don't complete the sentence that is given in the text, so I'm going to use ellipses. And then I'm closing out, again, both pieces. This is really one of the complex strategies for quoting because it is a quote within a quote. And there are ways around that, but the handout that I provided for you will also give you further examples. Finally, I'm going to give the author if it's necessary, right? If I feel that it's needed for clarity or because I've switched between sources. And then I'm going to give the page number and make sure that I finish with a period afterwards. Okay, so all of these are laid out for you in the various quote type illustrations that I provided in integrating quotes in EJ on Canvas. In text quotations, right, a number of different strategies with illustrations from Enrique's journey, quotes with ellipses, quotes within a quote, and then block quotation. And of course, make sure that you use them effectively. Don't give anything out of context, right, as you can see in this illustration. All right, so within the quiz, I will be asking you to analyze a text, drawing inferences or making inferences and drawing conclusions using close reading. You're going to be demonstrating not only the conclusions you drew, but also you'll be demonstrating the strategies that you are using. So within the quiz, I'll be providing a passage for you. Here, I'm just going to lay out what you would do in your own essay building practice. You would choose a passage or section first, of course, one that stands out to you. In the quiz, I'll be giving you a passage and section. You will then be asked to read it closely and draw inferences from the text. So the first thing you would do is you're going to ask a question of the text, using the question stems or circles as a strategy. For example, what are the ways that hope is represented here? Positive, negative. Notice that my question is relatively open-ended in this case because I don't want to impose a particular view. I want to show that I'm starting with an open mind, and then I'm determining, right, a conclusion after that. Once I've asked that question, I'm then going to annotate for answers to that question. What are the details that you're noticing? Why are they important? What larger pattern do they reveal? How does this passage relate to other areas of the text? And how does this example relate to larger issues in society? So you'll be asked in the quiz to identify certain details, to highlight parts of the text or passages in order to demonstrate the kind of close reading that you're doing and what elements you're drawing inferences from. Then you're going to be asked to provide an answer to that question, right? And it'll become a pie paragraph. So initially, you'll want to decide what direction are you heading? In what way have you answered the question you've asked the text? Okay. And then for the quiz, you will be integrating your quote. So you'll review those annotations, your initial response to the passage. Maybe that's all happening, at least in your mind, the initial response. And then you'll be going through the steps of underlining the sections of the passage you want to quote, noting the who, what, how, and where. You'll analyze the quote again and consider how it directly connects to your thesis or that central argument you developed. And then you're going to create a mini pie paragraph and integrate your chosen section using the best strategy for you and for this particular passage. And that could be an in-text quotation, ellipses, quote within a quote, or block quotation. And then you'll punctuate and cite your work correctly as a later reference to the text. So these will be the general strategies that you'll be using in writing your essays, of course, but also the strategies that I'll expect you to use within the quiz. And that's it. So return to your integrating quotes handout that I'll be posting for you. And you can have that available to you while you're taking the quiz. You will be able to have your text open and available to you as well. But you'll definitely want to do a little bit of practice in the discussion forums this week, right? So use those as the initial practice, and then I'm going to be using the quizzes to make sure that everyone has these skills.